Hello. The summer Calvin turned 18, something subtle began to shift in our home. It wasn't anything I could point to, not an argument, not a change in behavior. It was in the way he walked through the kitchen in the mornings, quiet but present, his voice deeper and his smile more hesitant than it used to be. He had always been affectionate as a child, quick to wrap his arms around me after school, eager to share every detail of his day. But now the hugs had become side glances, almost nervous touches on the shoulder when I handed him a plate of food. I didn't know when he'd stopped reaching for my hand in the car or when he'd begun looking at me like he was studying something he didn't quite understand. One late afternoon in June, I stood in the doorway to the backyard, watching him rake the lawn shirtless, sweat beading along his collarbone. The rake moved in slow, precise lines, and the sunlight played tricks with his shadow. I blinked and looked away quickly, ashamed at the way my thoughts had drifted, at the heat that climbed up my neck. He came inside a few minutes later, his hair damp, the scent of cut grass clinging to him. He grabbed a water bottle and stood at the kitchen island, drinking slowly. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, brows raised. "Just tired," I said with a soft smile. "You're doing a great job out there." He shrugged. "Trying to earn my keep." "Your keep doesn't include turning into a lumberjack," I teased, reaching out to brush a leaf off his shoulder. The moment my fingers touched his skin, he froze just for a second. Then he smiled, but something behind his eyes flickered. I stepped back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with the windows open, listening to the sound of the wind brushing against the trees, wondering when our closeness had started to feel like walking a tightrope. We had always been close. It was just the two of us since he was 4, after his father left. We built our own kind of life, quiet dinners, late-night movies on the couch, long drives with no destination. But now those same rituals felt charged, like walking into a room where someone had just spoken your name. 2 nights later, during one of those movie marathons we used to love, I dozed off on the couch. I woke to the sound of the credits rolling and Calvin's steady breathing beside me. My head was on his shoulder, his hand resting lightly, almost protectively, on my arm. I didn't move right away. His fingers shifted, just slightly. I wondered if he was awake, if he noticed how I had drawn in a slow, deep breath as though afraid of breaking the moment. Then he spoke. "I missed this," he said, so softly I wasn't sure I'd heard him right. "You used to fall asleep like this all the time." I swallowed. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I guess I did." His hand slipped away then, quickly, as though realizing something too late. We didn't talk about it. The next morning, I made pancakes. He didn't mention the couch, and neither did I. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't the silence of comfort anymore. It was full of questions neither of us knew how to ask. That afternoon, we took a walk in the park. The air was warm, the path almost empty. At one point, he reached for my hand like he used to when he was younger. The motion was instinctual, automatic. I let it happen. But after 2 steps, he seemed to realize it and dropped my hand as if burned. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's fine," I said quickly, too quickly. He glanced at me, his face unreadable. That night, he hugged me goodnight, like always, but this time, the hug lingered. Just a heartbeat longer. I felt the slow rise and fall of his chest against mine, his arms tighter than usual. My hands stayed pressed against his back, still, suspended in a moment neither of us knew how to explain. When he pulled away, he smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Good night, Mom," he said. "Good night, Calvin." And I stood there in the dark long after he had gone upstairs, wondering what it was we had almost said. The days drifted by like petals on a river, calm on the surface, but caught in something deeper underneath. We fell back into old routines, but they no longer felt easy. They felt watched. Even in the quietest moments, I could sense him holding something back, and I feared he saw the same in me. One evening, while I was folding laundry in the living room, Calvin walked in holding a photo album I hadn't seen in years. "I found this in the closet," he said, settling beside me on the rug. "Thought you might want to look through it." I hesitated. "That's from when you were little," I said, my voice soft. He opened it anyway. His fingers trailed over photos of birthdays, beach trips, messy hair, and frosting-covered cheeks. He laughed at some of the old Halloween costumes, him as a pirate, me as a tired cat with eyeliner whiskers. "Look at us," he said, turning the book so I could see. "We were so close." "We still are," I said too quickly. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "It doesn't feel the same." I looked up. His eyes were on the photo, but his voice trembled with something unsaid. He turned the page. There was a picture of him asleep on my chest when he was maybe 4, his little hands curled against my sweater. I remembered that night. He had the flu, and I'd stayed up, rocking him until he drifted off. "I used to feel safe all the time," he said. "You still are," I whispered. He turned to me then, slowly. "That's not what I meant." My heart skipped. He didn't explain, and I didn't ask. But that night, while I was washing dishes, he came into the kitchen and leaned on the counter. His hair was damp from the shower, curling a bit at the edges, and he looked uncertain in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Can I stay in your room tonight?" he asked, eyes fixed on the floor. I froze. He glanced up quickly. "Not for anything weird. I used to sleep there when I had bad dreams. And lately I've been having them again." My hands stilled on the sink. I wanted to say no, to protect whatever fragile line we were still pretending existed. But I couldn't ignore the trembling in his voice. "Okay," I said, almost inaudibly. That night, he curled up beside me like he used to. At first, he stayed on his side of the bed, back turned. But as the night deepened, I felt him shift. His hand brushed my arm once, lightly, like testing the air between us. "Are you awake?" he whispered. "Yes." He didn't say anything more. But after a long pause, he reached over and wrapped his arm around me. The hug was gentle, hesitant, full of questions he wouldn't voice. I could feel his breath on my neck, slow and warm, and his grip tightened slightly, like he needed this more than he'd let on. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart pounded loud enough to drown out the silence. Eventually, I felt his breathing even out. Asleep, or pretending to be. I lay there wide awake, afraid to move, afraid to stay. The tension in that hug, it wasn't wrong. Not exactly. But it wasn't simple, either. When morning came, he was already downstairs, making coffee as if nothing had happened. "Sleep okay?" he asked, his voice steady, neutral. I nodded. "Yeah. You?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah." We didn't speak of it again. But the next night, he asked to sleep there once more. And the next. And each time, there was a new silence, a new hesitation, a moment where a hug turned into something longer than it should have been. Never crossing a line, but always hovering right beside it. It was a kind of closeness I didn't know how to name. A love that refused to fit into old definitions. A warmth that neither of us dared claim out loud. July burned slow and heavy, the kind of heat that settled in your bones and made time feel thick. Calvin and I moved through the days like dancers who knew the steps but not the rhythm. Every moment felt like it was waiting for something we didn't know how to say. The nights became the most dangerous. That was when the house was quiet, when our secrets had room to breathe. One Saturday evening, the power went out in a summer storm. The sky had split open like paper, pouring sheets of rain onto the roof, thunder shaking the windows. I lit candles, set them along the kitchen counter, and pulled a blanket from the closet. "You want to sit in the living room?" I asked. He nodded, already barefoot on the tile, his face golden in the candlelight. We curled up on the couch, wrapped in silence and fleece. I thought he would say something, make a joke, talk about school, anything. But he just stared at the candle flame for a long time. "It's weird," he said at last. "When the lights are out, I feel closer to you." I looked at him, but he wasn't looking at me. He continued, "Like we don't have to pretend. Like we can just be." "Be what?" I asked too softly. He finally turned, and the look in his eyes made me forget how to breathe. There was nothing childish in it. Only knowing, wanting, fear. Whatever we are now. The air in the room felt thick with everything we'd never said. The words hovered there between us, heavy and electric. I could feel the space shrinking, the inches of couch between us, the years of habit and duty and affection we'd built into a wall now cracking at the edges. And then it happened. He leaned forward, just a fraction too close. His hand rested lightly on my knee. My breath caught. "I'm sorry," he said, voice raw. "I don't know what this is, but I keep thinking about that night." I swallowed. "Which one?" "The first one. On the couch. When you didn't move away." I didn't answer. He leaned his forehead against mine then, barely touching. A breath. A whisper. "Why didn't you?" My voice trembled. "Because I didn't want to." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loud with meaning. I felt his hand curl slowly around mine, fingers intertwining like they had when he was small, but not like that anymore. We both knew it. And then his lips brushed mine. Not a kiss. Just the edge of one. Barely there. Like a question asked without sound. I pulled back, just slightly. His hand slipped from mine, but he didn't move away. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "No," I said, my voice thin. "Don't be." Because he hadn't crossed a line. Not really. But we had stood on the edge of something neither of us could deny. After a moment, I touched his cheek gently, my fingers trembling. "Calvin, this isn't something we can explain." "I know," he said. "I don't want to explain it. I just don't want to lose it." We didn't speak for the rest of the night. We just sat there, side by side, watching the candles burn down, the rain still whispering against the windows. When he went to bed, he didn't ask to stay in my room. And I didn't ask him to. But I missed the weight of him beside me, the warmth, the breath between us. Because love, when it's unspoken, becomes a language only the heart understands. And I was listening. August came quietly. Calvin had started packing for college, boxes of books, stacks of worn t-shirts, that one mug he always used no matter how chipped it was. I watched from the hallway as he moved methodically, folding his life into cardboard, and something inside me ached. That evening, I made his favorite dinner, chicken parmesan, garlic bread, and sweet tea with just a hint of lemon the way he liked it. We didn't say much as we ate. The air between us was full of the things we'd almost said, the almosts that had built up like sediment. Afterward, he helped me wash the dishes. He stood close, his hand brushing mine as we reached for the same plate. I caught my breath, but didn't move away. "You're being quiet," he said, handing me a towel. "You're leaving soon," I replied. "I'm just trying to hold it together." He turned toward me, his eyes full of something fragile and fierce. "I don't want to go if it means losing this." "This?" I repeated, voice low. He nodded. "Whatever this is between us. I know it's strange. I know people wouldn't understand. But it's real, and it's ours." I set the plate down, water dripping from my fingers. "You're my son," I said, almost to myself. He stepped closer. "And you're the person I trust most in the world. The person I think about when I wake up and when I can't sleep. That doesn't feel like something I should be ashamed of." Tears pricked my eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of being seen so fully. "I don't know what to do with this, Calvin." "Me neither," he said. "But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." His hand reached for mine again, gentle and steady. I didn't pull away. We stood there in the kitchen, the light from the window softening as the sun dipped lower, casting golden stripes across the floor. And then, slowly, carefully, he kissed my cheek. A soft, lingering kiss. Tender. Not demanding. Just presence. A reminder. When he pulled back, he looked at me with the kind of gaze that holds no secrets. "Even if I have to go," he said, "I'll carry this with me." I nodded, my throat tight. He hugged me then, arms around my shoulders, head against mine. It was a long, quiet embrace. The kind that said goodbye without saying goodbye at all. The next morning, I stood at the front door as he loaded the last box into his car. He turned to me, his smile both brave and sad. "I'll call when I get there," he said. "I'll be waiting." He walked back toward me then, and before I could brace myself, he pulled me into another hug, this one different. Slower, like a last note in a song you don't want to end. He kissed my forehead, and then, without hesitation, he brushed his lips against mine again. Just once. Not deep, not searching. Just enough to say I know. Then he was gone. And I stood on the porch, hands clenched, heart full of something I still couldn't name. Because sometimes love doesn't need labels. It just needs space.
Bye.